Big 3 points for Arsenal as they finish 5-0 winners. We're going to dive into this match in just a second, but first things first, let's flash back to Friday and remember Stevie's prediction.
Oh, no. I tell you what, Dan Thomas has got to be involved in this. The one thing we're talking about Arsenal is they're struggling to score goals, and they're going to play against a side who are going to sit deep and try and block any sort of avenue.
What's your prediction for this game?
I do believe that Arsenal will overcome Crystal Palace.
Okay, yes.
I am just telling you.
Will it be a frustrating
I am telling you that anybody turning up thinking this is going to be 5 or 6-0.
Yes.
It's not going to be.
Stevie, your thoughts?
I knew it. I knew it.
Do you know who the first person to text the producer was?
Oh, man. Dan Thomas. He called me as soon as the game finished. As soon as the game finished. Listen, I've only got one thing to say in my defence. Nobody would have thought that Crystal Palace were going to be this bad.
So it wasn't Arsenal being good?
Arsenal were okay. Don't
just okay? 5 goals, just okay?
Don't try and tell me that this Arsenal team was a rampant Arsenal, because they weren't. You know, they got 2 goals from set pieces. As far as open play, it wasn't until Trossard's third that, I mean, Palace just downed tools. And then we saw what Arsenal are capable of, but that's with time and space and on the break. But they've still got some struggles breaking down defences. But at the same time, I'm going to have to eat crow. I was completely wrong, but again, nobody could have seen how bad Palace were going to be.
You agree with that?
Yeah, this was a good performance from Arsenal, nothing more, nothing less. It was exactly what they needed. Bearing in mind in the first half, the 2 goals from set pieces, they didn't create a lot else, and then they managed the game and it opened up for them and they took their chances, and in the end it was extremely comfortable and it was extremely embarrassing from a Crystal Palace and Roy Hodgson perspective, and that's a different story, and one that's not going to end well for Roy Hodgson, I don't think, looking at their form. But
did the 5 flatter Arsenal?
No, because Crystal Palace just... What was their outball? Give it to Mateta. He had a fight with the 2 centre-halves, ultimately went nowhere, and it came back at them. So it was never, ever in doubt once Arsenal went 2 up. And look, the only thing Arsenal needed to do was get 3 points here and then start to build some momentum. Because out of all the teams, well, out of the 3 teams that we think are going to be vying for the Premier League, they're the ones that have lost a little bit of momentum in the last month. So they have to find a way, starting in the start of today, to get the points, to get the goals, to get that momentum and start rolling forward. They've got Liverpool coming up at home, so that's going to be, you know, a real big test for them. And it was hugely important that they did not make any mistakes today and drop points. And in all fairness, Sebi, it never, ever, ever looked like it.
I didn't mention it when we saw them. We do have ex-Arsenal man Kieran Gibbs and Julien with us to discuss this game more. Kieran, are you buying this as kind of the turnaround performance Arsenal seemingly needed?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the engines have started up again. I mean, whether Crystal Palace were bad or not, you know, you have to give them credit. It was a strong performance today, matched with the result. And Craig's right, you feel like everyone needed that, the managers, the fans and the players, and it kind of just settles down the panic. But they were good today. And, you know, first and foremost, a clean sheet, which, you know, would have done them a world of good. And I think we just saw a lot more signs in the team that we saw last season in terms of their power going forward. You know, they had total control of the game, but they also looked dangerous today. I thought the most impressive thing today was, and I mentioned it last week in the studio, which I thought was missing this season, was how quick they got into Palace's final third. And I think it explains their expected goals number today, which was pretty high. I think it's their secret weapon, along with set pieces, funny enough, but how quickly they can transition from defence to attack and unleash their front 4, for me, will determine how successful they are this season. You know, when they win the ball back in the middle or in their own half, the first pass has to go forward, and they have to get those front boys involved in the game straight away and driving at the opposition as quick as possible. And I think we saw a lot more of that today, and that's what blew Palace away. It would have been nice to see Jesus on the score sheet, but I think his influence in the game today was undeniable, and he's a brilliant player. And you know what? I actually don't mind where we are in the league at all right now. Mid-Jan, nicely in and amongst the pack, and they can just go about their business quietly under the radar, not creating too much noise, hopefully. When they're flying high, it encourages your Craig Burleys and your Stevie Nichols when they lose a few to jump on this ridiculous Arsenal doomsday train.
He's had a couple of
as though it's some kind of sinking
He's
ship.
had a couple of weeks to get
ridiculous.
To get off the good ship paranoia, and he's
ESPN FC against Arsenal.
He's still on it. He's still believing that Arsenal should not come under any scrutiny.
I wish
but
Liverpool,
you know what, though?
I wish Liverpool were on top of the league.
Seen,
I really do.
Go on, Kieran.
We haven't seen this. We haven't actually seen this Arsenal side in this kind of position before. We normally see, last season they got chased down, at the last hurdle, and they kind of exceeded everyone's expectation last season, and lost in the final stretch. But it'd be interesting to see, when they're in and amongst the pack, chasing down. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
Jules, we know you got a soft spot in your heart for Arsenal. What do you make of what Kieran says?
Yeah, I agree with what Kieran said, what the boys said about the performance overall. This is a win that they absolutely needed. I think the break in Dubai did them some good, of course, and Arteta said that. In terms of being the hunted or being the hunter, I don't think I would want to be behind Liverpool and City going into the last stretch of the season just because they've been there before and they know how it works, and I'm not sure how many points they would drop. So even if you win your last 10, they might also win the last 10, both of them, by the way, and you still finish third. So I would always take the points first. But I also find it quite interesting what Kieran is saying. It's true that we haven't seen them chasing. We've seen them for the last 18 months more in the lead than not, more top than second or third or fourth. So it could be interesting, but I just don't trust City or Liverpool to drop points towards the end of the season.
Stevie, I know you're kind of having a laugh before, but you think Arsenal's in a good spot, flying under the radar?
Why would you not want to be top of the league? That makes no sense to me.
I mean, given what happened last year, if you're an Arsenal fan, you were top of the league most of the year and it didn't end well. So this is something different.
Well, that's all. At the end of the season last year, we were talking about how the experience of being at the top and being chased is going to be great for Arsenal, because the next time it happens, they're going to be able to handle it. I would far rather, if I'm Arsenal, be top of the league and able to call on that experience that I didn't have last year in order to turn it around this year, as opposed to being points behind and the game behind, and no matter what you do, it's not in your hands. That doesn't make any sense to me.
They're going to have to go on a good run. Do you back what we saw today to go on a run? I think they got Liverpool in a couple games. Other than that, the next 5 or 6 are pretty accessible.
They need to. Because City always generally come strong second half of the season, and we're starting to see, and we saw snippets of that at Newcastle, with De Bruyne coming back and with Erling Haaland still to come back. So they have to, and there's a pressure on to do so, particularly with Liverpool's form, and City are still the team to beat. I'm intrigued by this radar that they're flying under.
Yeah. What radar is this?
What team can be? I mean, Aston Villa are flying under a radar because nobody really expects them to be around come the end of the season, not in the fight for the title. But when you are the team that for, I don't know what it was, 80%, 85% of the season last year were playing great and were the team to catch and looked like you were going to win the league, and City come strong and you have some injuries and you don't win it, you go out and you spend big. You buy one of the best midfielders in Europe in Declan Rice. You spend 70 million on Kai Havertz. It was a curveball, but they spent it. So when you go out and buy these players, allied to the squad that you've got, your manager's been backed, and you're a year, 18 months down the line, there is no radar that you're flying under here. You're either in this title race or you're not. And you're only one bad result away from more questions, and that's what he could not afford to happen today. So, all in all, perfect day for them. Palace, it turned out, were a good team to play at the Emirates, and the likes of Trossard and others for the second half of the season putting the hand up and saying, hey, forget Martinelli, forget him. Because when this guy plays, comes off the bench or starts, he generally always makes something happen. And he did that again today.
Perfect. Other than the Declan Rice injury, we don't know how long it could be. Kieran, is this a player that Arsenal, and we saw that schedule, even if it's something short-term, they can survive without?
I mean, probably not. Probably not. I mean, I said it a few weeks ago as well. I think the middle of the park would be something to strengthen actually in the January transfer window if they can't strengthen up top, just purely because of the money. So, he's key. He's key. We need him. He's the first name on the team sheet. And if anything, if there is something wrong with him for a while, then that'll need to be addressed this window for sure.
Jules, any update? I mean, this could be huge for Arsenal's title hopes.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Of course, he will do some tests tomorrow. The good thing, I guess, in a way, if we can say it's a good thing, is that they don't play this weekend coming because it's the FA Cup. They're already out. So that gives you a bit more time for him to recover. Let's hope that it's maybe more like a Mo Salah kind of injury that we saw at AFCON, where maybe he felt a little bit his hamstring, but it's nothing too bad. So you miss a game or two maybe, and then you can come back. More than if it's a bad hamstring injury, and in that case, if he's out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then I think it's a huge blow. I mean, Jorginho can play there, but we saw the double pivot against Liverpool in the FA Cup working really well, suddenly for an hour. I think that was in Arteta's probably somewhere in his mind when Liverpool come back to the Emirates at the beginning of February, a game that we've mentioned already. If there's no Declan Rice for that, it's Jorginho on his own. It's a very different story, and I think they will struggle if Declan Rice is out for a long time.
Thomas Partey's reported to be due back early February. I mean, he's going to be short of match fitness. There's no doubt about it. But you might have to throw him in at some point, depending on Declan Rice. So
I'll tell you that's a problem. Liverpool's got the same problem with Salah, because as important as Declan Rice is, Mo Salah's the same for Liverpool. And with Liverpool and Arsenal playing, in 2 weeks?
Yep.
That's with a hamstring. Certainly in my experience, 2 weeks is the minimum for any sort of hamstring. It's going to be really tempting, particularly for Arsenal, to take a chance on Declan Rice. And if that goes the wrong way, and he's out for an even more period of time, that's a huge problem for them with the title race. They might have a real tough decision to make come the Liverpool game, whether they risk maybe their season or they just leave him out. That's a tough one.
To Jules' point, there is some time. There's 10 days until Arsenal's next game when they play Nottingham Forest. Since you mentioned Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson, you think this is it?
Well, you got Steve Parish at the game today. He owns a minority shareholding. The big investment comes from this side of the pond. They are ultimately being dragged back into the relegation dogfight. Now, do I think they'll be relegated? No, because other teams are being deducted points and there's more FA punishments coming for one or two of them. I think that would probably save them. But when they came back in last year, they scored a lot of goals. And off the back of Patrick Vieira, it looked good. But long term, it was never the way forward. And there was reports. I mean, every time they have a bad result, Steve Cooper's name pops up, who was relieved of his duties at Nottingham Forest. Graham Potter's name pops up. There are others out there that longer term, with a longer term view, that Palace have to make a decision on. And, Roy Hodgson's been a great coach for a long, long time, and he's done a great job wherever he is. But you've got to look at him now and look at his team and think, now's the time to make a change. And I think we saw that with the Palace fans today at the Emirates. They're getting really, really frustrated with the way the club is being run and with the way the team is playing.
Would you say down tools? You're basically saying they've quit on the manager, right? They've quit?
No, I'm not saying they quit on the manager. First of all, you quit on yourself. That's the first thing that happens. But the problem is when you've got 3 or 4 who look as though they're disillusioned and I'm just not sure what to do. That's completely different than, having a problem with a manager. They just need maybe a fresh face, some new fresh ideas to get them going, which is what happened when he came back. It was just a case of and fresh face, a different voice, slightly different way of playing, and it worked wonders. You know, it kind of smells and looks like that's what they need again.
Smells like a kind of Graham Potter. You know, rebuild his stock, good manager. Everybody's talking about him going to
in the
Man
stadium,
United.
wasn't he?
though.
He was in the stadium, wasn't he?
Everybody's talking about him going to Man United. He's not going to Man United. Man United are not going to hire Graham Potter. So somebody like that who would be prepared to go in there for, you know, at least a 3-5 year period, longer term, play some nice football, coming off the back of his sacking, would probably be given time, not a huge budget. Somebody like that going forward for them, I think would be ideal.